Tiffany. I first obviously want to thank everyone for coming tonight. We're just, the crowd here is pretty amazing. We're an organization, we highly encourage you to talk to strangers because they're just amazing people in the room. So after we finish up here tonight, I encourage you to kind of walk around and mingle and just interact. And I think you'd be kind of amazed at some of the different backgrounds and some people in the room tonight. So we're very fortunate to have everyone here. So my job tonight is to kind of give you an idea of how it all started. So what it looked like. My interest in these issues is somewhat hard to pinpoint, but it had been in me for a very long time. During my sophomore year of Kosovo, in my sophomore year, war broke out in Kosovo. The images on TV were horrendous. Paramilitary in camouflage and black ski masks roamed the region, slaughtering at free will in an attempt to ethnically cleanse 80% of the population. Villages were burned to the ground, bodies thrown into wells to contaminate the drinking water. Shell-shocked refugees were herded like cattle. To an idealistic 20-year-old, it looked like the Holocaust of my time was underway, and I didn't want to sit on the sidelines doing absolutely nothing about it. So I searched the web, and I found my way over there. I volunteered in refugee camps on the Kosovo-Macedonia border, and needless to say, it profoundly changed my life and ultimately led to the organization that we now celebrate today. In the refugee camps, I was amazed by how little it took to improve conditions for people. Food, water, and shelter could turn a doomed life into a hopeful life. I began to realize that as huge as the issue of global poverty can seem, in the end, there is absolutely nothing complicated about improving life for someone who has absolutely nothing. This simple truth forced me to confront another simple truth, and that is that nearly not as much was being done to address these issues as I had assumed. The issues became very personal to me. It was no longer distant strangers on TV experiencing the hardship. It was the people I knew, admired, and interacted with every day. The camps provided a daily window into the injustice and hurdles that so much of the world experiences. My takeaway from Kosovo and Macedonia was that our foreign policy matters. When our leaders add or subtract funding from the international affairs budget, it impacts the lives of millions of people. After college, I began developing the organization that would eventually become known as the Borgen Project. The goal was lofty, though fairly straightforward. I wanted to get U.S. leaders doing more to address global poverty than they otherwise would. I knew very little about politics, but I knew enough to know that lobbyists often influence the political system. In a world of big tobacco, big oil, and a lot of other big industries, I felt very strongly that the starving, fly-covered 4-year-olds of the world were long overdue for an influential ally of their own. I had absolutely no idea how to begin such an undertaking, and so I started doing a ton of research, everything from the political process to web development, and the pieces started to come together. Opportunities often come from odd places. And for me, the opportunity to launch the Borgen Project came in the form of a fishing boat up in Dutch Harbor, Alaska. During the off-season, captains often hired people to live on the boats to make sure no damage was caused by storms or vandals. To most Alaskan fishermen, these jobs are known as boat watch, and they were avoided and dreaded by all. The isolation of living alone on a fishing vessel through the winter, combined with the creaking of the boat and the numerous scary noises such creaky boats make, was rumored to have driven many a good man insane. But for a person who needed the free place to stay and hours to focus on developing a startup organization, the opportunity to head for Alaska seemed like my one and only shot to launch this organization. Almost 10 years ago today, I arrived on a small island in the Bering Sea. The section of the 109-foot fishing vessel where I lived and worked was windowless and had the feel of a bomb shelter. My makeshift office was the kitchen table in the boat's galley, and for internet I had duct taped several hundred feet of phone cords together and ran it from an outlet on the dock down to my laptop. Day and night I spent in the boat, working on my computer, while the boat rocked back and forth, side to side. I just kind of sat away going with the flow. And that was where the Borgen Project began. All of Borgen Project's early funding came from my paychecks living on the boat, along with a stint fishing in the Bering Sea. In those days, we had one volunteer, we had one donor, and it just so happened that I was both people. After my time in Alaska, from this unlikely place, the Borgen Project began, and soon started to grow. After my time in Alaska, I moved to Seattle. I worked for Packard and Kenworth Trucks at an office in Renton, And in the evenings, I continued to work on the Borgen Project. While the first year and a half of the organization, it was just me, eventually a web-based network of volunteers started to emerge. In those days, the Borgen Project was primarily a website that focused on educating people about global issues. But as funding started to trickle in, things started to move. I found a tiny office space and crammed 4 IKEA desks together, and this was our early headquarters. This also proved to be a pivotal point, though, in the organization that turned it from being just a web thing into having a team and started to directly lobby members of Congress. I owe a great deal of gratitude to my brother Justin and his wife Allison, who at this time allowed me to crash at their house. I owe a great deal of gratitude to my family overall. My Mama Borgen, who's also here, Mama and Justin, well, you guys stand up, and Allison. My family's over this table. Lacey, who teaches her first grade class how to write letters to Congress. And my girlfriend Kate, who has to put up with me on the computer, still hours and hours, though on admittedly less rocky ground. So eventually I took a position with a startup company in Pioneer Square. And then wanting to have that organization close to me where I worked, I posted a few flyers in nearby office buildings. Nonprofit seeks donated office space. Now, as dumb luck or divine intervention would have it, one of those flyers was seen by a gentleman by the name of Demetrius Jokits, who happened to be familiar with the Borgen Project. And though we hadn't met before, it also turned out that he was the son-in-law of Dick Andrew, a family friend and my high school football coach. Demetrius had mentioned the idea of the Borgen Project moving into his boss, Mark Tiernan, and just like that, the Borgen Project had a new home. 6 years ago, Aegis opened their beautiful headquarters to the Borgen Project, and hence that's been an absolute game changer for us. These 2 Navy veterans have provided the Borgen Project with a launch pad that has allowed us to grow and to keep overhead extremely low. Mark and Demetrius, do you guys want to humor me and just stand for a moment to recognize? So over the past 6 years, things began to accelerate for the Borgen Project at a remarkably fast pace. Our political access and impact we have with it has reached levels that few organizations ever achieve. Whether it's the office of Speaker John Boehner or Majority Leader Harry Reid, the Borgen Project gets the big meetings. More remarkable, we've pulled this off with very little funding, and until recently, not a single paid staff. It never ceases to amaze me how much can be done with such a little amount, and that we take great pride in this, and I just really want to convey that it is our volunteers that make this happen and make it possible. Now, it probably goes without saying, but running the organization without a salary in the past 2 years while keeping myself afloat has taken some creativity. When the startup I was working on took a tumble during the economic downturn, I began working evenings and weekends delivering room service and bussing tables at a nearby hotel. I would head into the Borgen Project in the morning, leave it at 4 for my night job, and come home around midnight. This was my existence for 5 years. My vacation time was used for trips to meet with members of Congress in DC. Whatever pride I took from finding myself in the position to get the big meetings with the powers that be and advocate for legislation that impacts millions of people was always quickly humbled in the evening by my inability to polish the silverware quite to my manager's liking. So there's so many people I need to thank tonight, and more than I could possibly fit into this evening's speech, but I want to hit on a few. One is Jeff and Linda Hendricks, who owned the fishing boat that I worked on, and they've been amazing donors to the Borgen Project over the past 10 years. The other is the Seroptimus group of Fidalgo Island, who did not know I was going to call them out, but I asked that they please stand as well. So this is This is an amazing group of women from my hometown, and every year for the past 9 years, they've thrown a fundraiser every year. They put a lot of work into doing this fundraiser, and they donate money to the Borgen Project. And they've probably, of the 600 times I've met with members of Congress and their staff, they've probably covered the expenses of me going back there, at least half of those. So I really, really appreciate the hard work that they do and everything they do. And it's very special to me that you're here tonight. So there's an anonymous donor we have, which I also would very much like to recognize and thank. It was about, I guess, almost 3 years ago around Christmas time. I was going through the Borgen Project's mail, and I opened up an envelope, and there was this big old check that had the number 30 and then 3 zeros after that number 30, and it just blew me away. So I can't stress enough the impact this had for us and how much it's really just allowed our operations to grow and flourish. And maybe that person's here tonight. If so, I would love to say hi. But I just really want to thank you and the impact you've had for the organization. The people who definitely get all the kudos in the world of the Borgen Project are our interns and our in-office team. And at this point, if you guys can stand for me, I really want everyone to recognize who you are. So these are the people who make the magic. I mean, they really are. They're the ones that are implementing the strategies. They're the ones that are recruiting volunteers nationally, and they're the ones that are interviewing volunteers nationally, and they're the ones who've really been able to allow us to build this network of volunteers in over 200 cities now. So I really can't thank you guys enough for all the work you do. I know I'm a boss that's always distracted and not interacting as much as I need to, but I just really want to thank you for all the hard work you put in and the good work you've done. I now have the pleasure to introduce our final speaker of the evening, Don Gerskis. And Don Gerskis is just amazing background. He served as interim CEO of ShoreTel and also led Boost Mobile. In 5 years, he helped take the company from being an idea into doing $1.8 billion in revenue. With this background, you're probably not terribly surprised that he's had an amazing impact for the organization. He stepped right in, and just everything you can think of, he's out there making happen for us. He's meeting with members of Congress. He organized our online fundraiser we did. He's just been an extremely energized go-getter, and he's just added a lot of value to everything we do and giving me a lot of great feedback. So I'm very pleased to welcome my friend Don Gerskis, who flew up here from California today to speak with us. Thanks.